Today's guest started inside agencies as a strategist. She spent nearly 2 decades in the agency world, growing from intern to strategist to ultimately leading teams. Now she's a strategy director at one of the biggest agencies in Brazil with over 120 employees.
Bigger the audience, the less people will give in any particular matter.
But what makes this story interesting isn't just experience. It's about how to translate the founder's vision into a clear direction for the team.
Half of the work is just making people actually buy your idea and actually respect your authority when you're saying we should do this and not that.
In this episode, we'll talk about what changes when you step into leadership, how you communicate leadership vision to the team, and how culture is shaped by the people leading from the middle. Irina, welcome to Agency Culture Conversations.
Thank you so much for having me. It's going to be an honor to share some of the things that I've learned along this way.
Irina, the pleasure is all ours. For everyone who's listening, Irina, do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself and your story? I'd love to know more about your journey from internship and what that looks like into your current position as a strategy director.
All right. Well, I always knew what I wanted. So very early in the high school, I decided to step into the advertising world. So I went to a college that is specialized in that. And I started working actually in account management because once I started in college, everybody, my teachers and my colleagues said I was great with relationships and I was very organized. So I took my first internship. It was actually in account management, but it's very hard. And it's so much harder than you think. And especially the relationship part, which we will talk about later as a leader, I developed, I read a lot. I saw a lot of videos. I read a lot of books, and I talked a lot to loads of people to develop my skills in leadership. It's not something that is entirely natural. And I think that's important to be said because people think it's very spontaneous and natural, but it's not. It's a skill that can be learned and it can be trained at. So I started at account management and I didn't have the relationship skills that I have now. So it was very tough for me. So I moved to strategy because it was a more fit into the kind of things that I like to do. And I love to study. I love to learn new things. So the strategy career was a very good fit for me. So, but yeah, it's not very adventurous. I just started in advertise agency first as an intern, then as an assistant, then a boss that I had as an assistant took me to another agency. I became a coordinator. Then she recommended me to another agency once we lost a client, and I went to the other agency with the client and got a promotion. And then I decided to, well, while I was getting into the management position, I also started to do some side quests, some other things. So I did a master's, post-graduation, lato sensu. I don't know how that would translate into the American system of education, but I did both strict sensu and lato sensu. And I also started a social project that is called Perifa Lions, and is backed by the actual Cannes Lions Festival. It's very successful. We've changed the lives of dozens and dozens and dozens of people. And on the side of that, I was continuing my career as a strategist. Eventually, I became manager, director, and now I'm in this second agency as a director.
Wow, such a impressive journey. And it sounds like a huge part of your journey was the education and the work that you put towards building your leadership skills. So I actually want to dive deeper into that, Irina. So you started in the space, in the agency space, and really started growing inside of it. I want to ask, when did you first realize you no longer wanted to just be responsible for the strategy, but you also wanted to be responsible for the people doing the strategy?
I guess that happened when you start just doing the work and you realize that's not enough. If you just deliver good keynotes, good decks for the creatives, and they don't like you or they're not very particularly uh, um, enthusiastic about your idea, you're just going to be ignored and there's not much you can do. So very early, I realized that it was not just about the work I would do sitting in front of a computer, but half of the work is just making people actually buy your idea and actually respect your leadership and respect your authority when you're saying we should do this and not that. So it was very early that that became very clear to me. I think I was still an assistant when I saw the power of having lunch with the creatives in unlocking what things I needed them to do. It made a huge difference. Start having lunch with them. So yes, I think it was very early on.
So that's very interesting that you mentioned the authority behind communicating and being able to put out the ideas you have to your team. I really want to explore. So how how did your mindset change when you finally made that shift into becoming a leader? Were there things that you had to do differently, ways you had to communicate differently to set that authority forward?
Yeah, it was, I think, I guess as most of the things that we learn, it came through frustration. You know, you do something and then it doesn't have the outcome that you want or that you believe you should have. And you start thinking, why it's not working? So, so I guess what I changed, because I was raised by, my father was the son of Germans, and sometimes the cliches are true. So he kind of raised me to believe that if you do your work, that's everything you need to be done. You know, you do your work right, and that's it. And then, especially if you're in creative industry, that is not the case, not at all. So I could see that work was not enough, and I said, okay, so I need to be less of a nerd and more of a leader, even if I was just an assistant, but I needed to lead the process and to make people believe that what I said made sense and it was good for them. So I developed series of techniques, even kind of selling techniques and saying, this is good for you because you can win award for with that, or you can move your this will be great because the client will love it, and or we need to get this done because this will be the relationship we need so we can do the stuff that we want. And so it was a bit of a, in the beginning, the very beginning, when I was an assistant, it was a lot about uh, um, empiric. Is that a word in English? Empiric. I was just testing and seeing what would work and what would not work. It was only a couple of years later that I started to actually look for authors and articles and things structured to learn about leadership.
Yeah, so Irina, you mentioned you were experimenting a lot. Do you mind sharing what was one technique that you experimented with or one strategy that you used to communicate with the team that didn't work and maybe you then changed to better fit what you needed?
I don't know. I can't say if that's an actual technique, but it was just meeting people outside of the meeting spaces. Because when you have one of the things that I've learned Probably there's some theory about it, and probably there's some research about it. But what I've learned is that the bigger the audience, the less people will give in any particular matter. So what I learned was, instead of just talking to the person inside the brief meeting, was just to approach the creative before on his desk, just two of us unstructured, saying, hey, I thought about this. What do you feel about that? Do you have any inputs? So, and that worked greatly. What didn't work, I guess it was just making straight confrontation, then trying to reason and have arguments. Many times that doesn't work, and it doesn't work at all. So, yeah, that's a straight confrontation did not work. Scaling up to my bosses, it does work sometimes. It works in the short term, but it gets a lot of damage on the long term. People will not collaborate with you if at the minor divergence, you just will scale up to your boss. But approaching people outside of a meeting space makes a lot of things go smoother.
So why do you think that is? Is it just the fact that people are more willing to share when they're on a one-on-one, or why is it more effective to communicate with people individually?
I think there's two factors. The first, they are not being watched or observed, so they don't feel like if they back down or something, or if they give in on anything, that will make them look weak or whatever are their insecurities. And I guess the other factor that helps a lot is that you show that you're really interested in listening to them and making collaboration, instead of, oh, this is the truth, you got to follow this. But again, having lunch, social lunch, sometimes makes more effect than having this conversation. I guess you have to do both, unfortunately, if you're someone who is not very social.
So how often are you having these individual conversations with your team? I know you lead a pretty big team. How feasible is it to talk to everyone on one-on-one?
It takes a lot of time, but but you know, at the stage that I am, I believe that this is more effective and this will do more the work than sitting down in front of a computer. So I know it takes a lot of work, but I think that the key mindset change that you have to have is that talking to people is your work. Your work is not, it's no longer in front of a computer, mining insights and doing research. Your work is to make people do stuff. One thing that I guess helps a lot, well, changed a lot of how I think about this relationships and how this work relationships happen. It's when I did my master's. I studied a philosopher who is a French philosopher. He's called Michel Foucault, and he talks about power. And his concept of power is very different from the concept of power that I had before. I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, it would be interesting to hear another perspective, but at least for me, whenever I heard the word power and I thought about power, I always thought about police. So I thought power was the ability to restrain people or the ability to stop people from doing something. And Michel Foucault says that power is, well, first of all, is a relationship. It takes two people to have power. And the power is the ability to make people make things. So to make people do things your way. And there was a huge change for me, because I was like, okay, yeah, so it's even interesting to think about the verb. He says that power is not something that you have, but it's an exercise. It's something that you exert. I don't know if that works in English, but yes, exert. Yes, as exercise. Okay, so you exercise power and you exercise it with or over other people. Over is a very bad preposition, but I guess when I learned that having power is the ability of making people act the way you want, I started seeing the power battles inside the work world very differently, and it made me more smart on my moves and how I would, because the thing is my end goal, and also I think it helps a lot to have a clear vision of what is your work. So my end goal is to have better campaigns where the consumer are represented, or we have creative campaigns that can connect better with consumers and bring the brand where it wants to be. So that's the end goal. And I would just have to do different things to reach that goal.
Yeah, I think that discussion you went into about power is very interesting. So for me, in the leadership space, power is being able to influence and being able to change someone's perspective on something through your words and your actions. And so that's really interesting that philosopher that you mentioned. Um, yeah, let's table that. I actually want to ask you something different, Irina. So I know that a lot of culture is shaped by founders and their vision of how they want the company to be run. But from what I've seen, inside agencies, a lot of the culture is actually shaped by directors and team leads because they are the ones who are directly working with the team every single day on a one-on-one basis. So, as someone who isn't the founder, where do you feel your influence on culture really shows up and really makes a difference?
I guess where it shows up, it's whenever I see my team acting or using words that I talked to with them before, or acting in ways that I asked them to act. And so if you want people to collaborate, and many times you have specific words or about the goals of the agency, about the ambition of the agency, and I can spot the influence when I see people using the same words or using the same rituals that I created. And so it's something that I can see that happening but you asked also something else about how to bring the vision into
Well,
the
I was
oh, sorry.
curious. So, founders, a lot of time, they're the ones who put forth the culture. They say, I want the team to function like X, Y, and Z. But a lot of times that execution is done by you and leaders like you who are working with the team on an everyday, day-to-day basis. So, for example, when we're talking about collaboration, right? That's very difficult to get people to do, is to collaborate and talk to one another. So I was curious, as a director, how do you encourage that? How do you make sure that people talk to each other and they feel safe and willing to, you know, work with one another? Because I think that in itself is also very challenging.
Yeah, I guess the way to do it, it's not very glamorous answer. That is just repetition, or if we can make it sound a little bit more sophisticated, it's consistency. So first of all, I have to act with that, and I guess it will be like 3 layers. I have to act, collaborating is that's the example. Then I have to make sure everybody knows that I'm collaborating. So I make sure that I always talk to my team and say, oh, I asked the creative director. Oh, I talked to the media team. Oh, you know what? Who's going to be great to answer that? Management team. They are great. And always propping up the other departments and making sure everybody sees them in a good line as competent people, as people we could rely on and exchange with. So yeah, maybe that's one little technique that works the best. Compliment everybody all the time, not empty compliments, but highlighting the skills and what each department brings to the table. So I always say, oh, I talked to the creative director because, he's great. And he gave me this perspective, which I thought it was very, very clever. So that's why I'm changing this. Oh, I talked to the management team because, they know exactly how to put this forward. And they came with a very good input. So I guess you have to be intentional with that. So behavior, making sure everybody knows about that behavior, and then consistency, or if you will, in a more practical way, repetition. So if someone from my team says, "Oh, I couldn't do that," have you tried talking to your peer? Have you tried talking to that person in that team? Please go talk to them. So it's just, you have to have a very clear vision of what you want, and just that repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat.
I actually love that you mentioned complimenting your team. That's a very refreshing take, and actually not something that I hear other founders do very often. But I think when you compliment other people, it builds trust, right? So people are more willing to go to that person because they know that, that person has already helped Irina, so they can potentially help me. So I really love that pattern of building trust. So you mentioned something, Irina, that I actually want to dive deeper into. So you mentioned that not only do you have to do the behavior, but you have to also tell people that you are doing that behavior. So I'm curious to know, why do you feel like it's so important to tell people that you're doing a particular action? Is it because you want to encourage that, or tell me a little bit more about your thought process?
I guess that maybe has to be with the fact that I'm in advertising. That's my college, my education. So in advertising, we know that it's better not to leave things unsaid if you want to make sure that people will catch the message. You just tell them. It's not very elegant, maybe, but it works. So so I guess, and also I think it's, people have so much in their heads. They have so much to do in the work, outside the work, that I think it's a little bit too much to ask people to read between the lines, or to, oh, catch in the air what you meant to be, or what you meant when you said that. So you just, say, one of the main author that I use as a reference for my leadership is, of course, Brené Brown. And she has a say that says, clear is kind, unclear is unkind. So, just don't make people do the effort of trying to know what you meant. You just tell them.
So I actually really love that. And it makes me think a lot about your leadership philosophy. So it seems that you value honesty and you value being clear with your team a lot. So I'm curious to know, and I want to actually ask you a different question. How do you create an environment where people are clear with you and they're honest about what they want and they feel safe, maybe telling you that you know, they don't agree with something or challenge your ideas? I'm curious how you create a culture and put that forth for your team.
Yeah, I guess it is a lot of work, and it's a lot of words, and the repetition, and being direct. So I value transparency because, yeah, I've got so much to do that I don't have the time to keep trying to guess what people want or why they're feeling unhappy or whatever. So being direct saves a lot of time. So but I know that's not the case in many, many workplaces. So the way that I forge this behavior is, first of all, of being very direct myself, and then communicating that directly to people. So whenever there's someone new in my team, and I say, but do you really believe that? Especially if we're just one-on-one, right? Again, the bigger the audience, the more people feel exposed, the less they will give in or back down on anything. So I will always approach people, say, it's okay if you disagree. And if I say something and I feel by the person's face that maybe the person doesn't agree, but it's not saying, I would actually address that directly and say, it doesn't look like you actually are okay with that. And then I say, it is completely okay for you to tell me it's not okay. And usually people will be honest after that. And also I think for other leaders, what's important that is that by listening to people, you're not obliged to work exactly on their feedback. And I also make that very clear. I was like, okay, so if the person says something and I don't agree with, I will say something like, oh, okay, I see that, but I don't believe we can do this way. But great to know that you think that way. I would take that in consideration in other situations. It's actually, I think the big thing is like, do not leave things unsaid. If you can say them, and usually you can say that it might be uncomfortable, it might come out awkward, you might be a little bit cringe. It is especially in the beginning when you don't have the experience of having these talks, but it will only do good things in my experience.
So, Irina, I'm curious to know, in your time working with founders and the leadership team, have there been times where you've had to speak up and tell the team that, you don't actually agree with something that they want to do? Has that ever happened to you?
Yes. You say speaking back to the founders or speaking to the my own team?
Um, Either way, so have you ever had to, push back against your team and say, no, we have to do it this way? Or, when you're speaking to the founder wants you to push out a new initiative or protocol and you don't really agree. Has that ever happened to you?
Yes. And well, what usually I say is that if I don't agree with the founder, I say, well, I don't think that's the best way we could go. And many times you can negotiate something in the middle, but you will see what's non-negotiable. And if it's an order and you have to follow, and it's not illegal or unethical, okay, we will do it. Because at the end, I think it's also about respecting who's got more of them in the line. If the person is the founder and ultimately is the person who will get the consequences of their decisions, you got to respect that. So, okay, I don't agree, but if you insist and we must do that, I will do that. And with my team, usually I'm very, very honest about it. I was like, oh, okay, I don't agree with that, but it's very important. He decided we should do it, so we're gonna do it. And yeah, so I will just comply. But I will speak up.
Yeah, I think, as part of a team, sometimes it's hard to, a lot of times you're not all on the same page. You don't agree on the same things all the time. And so I'm curious, founders, they often speak in very big ideas. So they want growth, they want positioning, they want big goals for the year. But teams really need to know what and how that translates into daily work. So, how do you, as a director, Irina, take a big leadership vision and turn it into something clear for people doing the work? For example, like if your founder and your team, leadership team says, we want more growth, we want more campaigns. How do you then take that and then give that to your team? And how do you translate that into work for your team?
I know I said earlier about how some stuff are just pure and simple repetition. But in this case, I take the time to craft a document and materialize things in a document. Every year, in the beginning of the year, I would just take the ambitions of the agency and take the time and take many hours crafting a deck of how that impacts us, or actually the wording is different. How can we support that vision, right? So the agency wants X. How can we, each one individually and as a team, support the whole agency to reach that goal? And what's funny, maybe we talk a lot about self-esteem and also believing that you should be the protagonist and the leader. But living in this agency world where there's a lot of ego and there's a lot of struggle with collaboration, usually what I do is kind of the opposite and say, we will do nothing alone. We are here to support other departments. So we will only have better campaigns if the creative team can collaborate with us, if we are listening. So if we're listening, yes. If we can influence them, but I always take the time and the energy to show how the other departments are very, very important, and we are a supporting team for the agency and not the protagonists,
Interesting. So you say that you do this every year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. How long does that take you? I can imagine that, taking on a task that big is very challenging. It's not easy.
It took more time in the first year, but then the first time you do it for the first time, the other years just iteration. So I got my formula, and so I get the ambition of the agency, how that translate into feasible or to concrete KPIs. So is that winning Cannes Lions? Is that getting X more clients? Is that having, I don't know, more LinkedIn posts or clients giving other chunks of their account to us? And then I make a reflection. It's not very long. It's like 20 slides maximum. And how do we contribute with that? What can we do? What does that mean for us as a team and as team members? So it's actually 20 slides. I don't know. I put about 20 hours in it. It's not that much, but it was for the first time. But after you do it, it becomes so much easier.
Wow. Irina, is that something that you started at your company? So you were the first person to put that new idea forward?
Yes, and I did it out of the lack of time that I had with the senior, with the board of the agency that I was before, and they wouldn't have the time to direct us, and so I did it to give this sense of progress and purpose to the work, and it was, people were amazed, everybody loved it. So when I came to Amplify, they asked me to do the same here, so we just did it. And it's impressive how that motivates and engage and makes a very big difference on how the team will behave along the year. But also, again, on the repetition and consistency, I do not do this on January, just leave it behind. Every now and then I would reference that document. And if people ask me something that I know that has something to do with the document, I always say, remember that document? Go back there and we'll read again and we will see it. Or I would just bring the document to a call and say, remember what we said, what we wanted? So this is what we wanted. So that's a form of communicating people that that document, it's real. It's not just something that I did as a, I don't know, as a prop.
So you go back and you check in on that document and use it as maybe a template for your team. So Irina, I'm very curious about this presentation and these slides that you put together. So you say that you do it for the entire agency. Are you doing that for other teams outside of your strategy team as well?
No, I did in 2 different agencies, but always for my team. I know that other team asked me for the document to serve as an inspiration for their own team, but I like to do it for just my team, especially because that feels cozier. It feels less corporate, so it feels more real, and people would engage more.
Got it. So every slide that you put is one person. Is that correct? So let's say slide number 1 is you, Irina, and then slide number 2 would be me, and then so on and so forth. Is that right?
Yeah, I put that in the end. So it works like that. It have the first slides like, well, actually the first slide is recap. And I think that's also very important because we are always so focused on what's lacking and what needs to be done that we forget to celebrate everything that we achieved. So the first slide is a recap of what we've done in the previous year. So we managed to do this and we managed to do that. And then I have a slide that is celebrating this. Okay, so we did stuff and we did good stuff. So what's next? What do we have for this year? And then I have the founder's vision. Oh, they want to be the most creative agency in the country. How does that translate into our daily, not daily work, but how does it translate into KPIs? So it's like winning at least one kind lion, winning. And many times the founders will not tell me what are the KPIs. So I just make them myself, and it's okay because it's something that I did with myself for myself. So there's no problem. I don't even look for their approval. I usually don't even show them the deck. So okay, so that how does that vision translate into concrete goals? And then I make a slide that is kind of philosophical on how do we support this? And then I makes, and then the next slide is some reflections about how can we support, even if it's unstructured. So we should give more insights to the creative team. We should support the account management team into getting the approvals that we need to put this creative work in the daylight. Oh, we need the media to be more collaborative. And so I translate that into things that we can do daily. And then I try to put that in some kind of internal goals. Like I would say, one of them was I want everybody with 0 extra working hours. I want everybody to be able to bring at least 1 reference per week to our team. You just need to send me the link, but I want you to share references because that's important so we can support the team. I don't know. So I translate that into goals for the team. And then at the end of the deck, there's one page slide about each person of the team with some of their skills and what they're good at and something fun and unexpected that they have to contribute with. And that creates a kind of a more compromise from people because they actually do each one of their slides. And then usually when I make this presentation, we go to a different place. Then we have lunch together. So I make this a very a ritual So it feels special, and that makes a lot of difference.
Wow, I really love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's very special and very meaningful, and I'm sure something that your team really looks forward to. So, Irina, I'm going to actually ask you something different and ask you a little bit about your team and how you make sure the people you bring on are the right fit. So it seems that a lot of your work is, you trust your team to do the work. You are clear with them and you have the expectation that if you're clear with them, they will perform the work and they have the skills to do the work. So I'm curious, sometimes, the most talented person isn't always the best culture fit with the team. And, that's a hard trade-off that many leaders face. And so I'm curious to know, have you ever had to choose between, talent and skill and, culture fit and team fit? Has that been something you've encountered before?
Yes, and I will choose team fit 100%. I think talent is, especially in the agency world, it's kind of a tricky word because kind of talent is kind of overrated. And if you ask anyone if they are special and above average, everyone will say that you're special and above average. And so usually don't find someone with that much of a talent that would make up for everything that you lose when you don't have a cultural fit. But especially seeing that my job is to make the team work, I can see that I think the first of all of becoming a leader is knowing that your job is to make people make their jobs at their best. And no amount of my own time will ever be better than 8 people using that same amount of time. So every hour that I put in making my team better, I multiply my work by 8 if I have 8 people team. So in this scenario, if I have one person that is very, very good, but it's not a cultural fit, that person is giving me more work with 7 other persons. So it's a lot of work for me to do to compensate for the lack of cultural fit that person, even talented, will bring me. So it doesn't add up, it doesn't compensate. And I talk a lot about work and transparency and always try to welcome people, but I have no problem with firing people too. And everybody that works with me knows that. So if it's not a cultural fit, I don't care if people are talented. There's very, very little chance they're talented enough to make up for all the trouble they will bring you.
So that's really interesting. So I want to ask you about that. So how can you tell when someone is not a good culture fit? Do you find that pretty early on, or is it only once they've been with you a couple months that you start to realize that?
Yeah, because I don't think, well, people were more, I don't know the word in English, but people are more, you can influence people's behavior way much more than you think. So whenever I see behaviors or discourses that are not productive, that are not good for what I need for the team, I make this effort of correcting the root and talking to the people and guiding them, and especially being direct and saying, this is not very nice to be said. This is not good behavior. I need you uh, to get better on this, on that. So usually it's a long journey of many, many conversations, of many weeks, showing what I expect from someone in that position and letting them have the opportunity to show a different behavior. And when they're not, I'm going to point out, like, this is again something that I do not believe is productive for the team. I will not agree with that. And eventually, after a few weeks, a few more than just a few weeks, usually it's a months long process. And usually I talk with HR before I give like many rounds of conversations before I decided to let go someone.
What are some negotiables, non-negotiables that you've had with working with your team? Like, for example, what was a major reason that you let someone go for?
Well, I can say two different ones. One was honesty and transparency. The person would not speak their mind, would not be honest with me or with the agency, and I fired him for that. And another one was kind of it was kind of ethical because it's very important for me to welcome people with different backgrounds and make them feel comfortable. And there was this person who was it was not a top performer. It was an average performer, and was not very sensitive with people with a different background, and made people uncomfortable. And I talked to her many times, and she couldn't help behaving in a way that wouldn't let people be comfortable. So I chose the team.
Yeah, and I'm glad you chose the team. I'm sure they're very appreciative of that. Yeah, such a challenging situation to be in when, someone is a really good a really good performer or, very talented, but not the best person on your team. So from that, I actually want to ask about some of the team traditions that you have. So you mentioned that one thing that is really important to your team is, going to have that lunch meeting and then having that presentation. Can you tell me more about other team traditions and, some things that you guys do for fun?
Well, yes, it's really hard since the pandemic because we all hybrid workers and we kind of lost this appetite for the social gatherings. But one that that I did, it was after pandemic. It was July where we had a lot of work. It was heavy. It was tense, and by the end of July, everybody was very exhausted and with low energy, and we still had this 6 months of the year to work with. So seeing that everybody was in such a exhaustion and low energy, and I couldn't just give vacations to everyone. So what I did, and it wasn't just in my department, I talked to my colleagues from account management, media, and creative, everybody that worked for that client. And what we did, we organized a fake New Year's Eve at agency. So it was a lot of fun. In Brazil, it's kind of mandatory to wear white on New Year's Eve. Everybody dresses entirely in white. So that becomes very characteristic for us. When you see someone all dressed in white, you always think about New Year's Eve. So it was a big campaign. I had to convince the other directors to do this. And we did is everybody just showed up in a random Thursday, all dressed in white. I brought champagne, and we had this confettis to pop up, and then and we did a celebration of the best of the year. So we gave out fake awards, just like the Dundies, from The Office. We gave out fake awards for the person who worked the most and still was nice to people, the person who carried out the whole team on their back because she was so committed to you. So we invented categories. We did a little voting. We had this fake trophies, And in the end, we just made a countdown, like at 3 in the afternoon, in the middle of the office. We just made a countdown, everybody together. And then we opened the champagne bottles and exploded the confettis and pretended it was a new year. And that helped. It helped a lot. People felt refreshed and people felt renovated. It was great.
That sounds like so much fun. How did you get people to buy into that idea? Because I can imagine, New Year's in July. That takes a lot of convincing. How did you convince your team to get into that idea?
Being annoying, I guess, just saying, we need to do this. It's going to be so much fun. And I guess, I think the first, for people to buy into idea, you got to do it yourself. So I was very enthusiastic about it and saying, this is going to be so much fun. So I was the first one to say, I will dress all in white. And I guess it's just like the other things. It's just, sometimes it's just repetition.
Yeah, so I think something I hear a lot is excitement is very contagious. So, if you are excited about something and you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to show up for other people, then other people are also willing to,
Exactly.
follow your example. So I love that you do that with your team and really appreciate you sharing that. I think we can all benefit from having silly and fun traditions like that.
I love
So,
silly.
yeah, me too. So, Irina, unfortunately, we are closing up on our time. And so I wanted to ask you a question that I'm very curious to know. Given that you are so accomplished, you've really worked your way up from, intern into a strategist and you got to know the team. And finally, now you're in a position to lead and put forth like a really great example and really great culture. So, looking back on your early leadership years, what mistake would you refuse to repeat?
That's a good one, because the mistake I would never repeat is to be a people pleaser. And I was, in the beginning of my roles as a leader, I was so uh, committed to please everyone that I could see that I became deprioritized by other people. Because if you're so into making everyone happy, no one will care to make you happy. And mistreating you or deprioritizing you will have no consequences. So in the beginning, being enthusiastic and being positive, I mixed with trying to make everybody happy all the time. And that is not productive, not even, especially for not productive for yourself, for your career, but it's not a good way to work, because it's not sustainable to be so so preoccupied, so worried with everybody being happy all the time. So I think that nowadays I found this balance of being someone who is positive, who is enthusiastic, but I will not do anything to please people. And that made a lot of difference for myself, for my sanity, and also for the work.
Well, everyone, this is your guest, Irina, and this is the Agency Culture Conversations. Thank you so much, Irina, for being on the show today.
Well, thank you again for having me.